I'm Samantha Evans, 28, and my father just handed me disownment papers for my birthday. Across the elegant restaurant table, Richard Evans, CEO of Evans Enterprises, watched coldly as my hands trembled. "You've never been good enough," he stated flatly, while my stepmother Victoria smirked. The legal document blurred through my tears as I clutched it, stumbling past judging eyes of other diners. I fled into the night, my world shattered, unaware that everything would change tomorrow when a competing CEO called my name. Before I dive into the most devastating and ultimately transformative year of my life, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you've ever had to prove your worth to someone who should have loved you unconditionally. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I turned the ultimate betrayal into my greatest victory. Growing up as an Evans meant living under constant scrutiny. Our sprawling Connecticut estate projected perfection to the outside world, but inside those walls, nothing I did ever measured up to my father's impossible standards. Richard Evans built Evans Enterprises from the ground up, transforming it into one of the most powerful tech corporations in the country. He expected nothing less than excellence from his family, especially me. My mother Elizabeth was the only buffer between my father's cold ambition and my childhood. She encouraged my creativity and independence, traits my father considered weaknesses. When pancreatic cancer took her away when I was 12, I lost my only ally in the family. At her funeral, my father stood stoically, not shedding a single tear. That same evening, he was back in his home office reviewing quarterly projections. Within a year, Victoria Chambers entered our lives, 20 years, my father's junior, with perfect honey blonde hair and a calculating smile that never quite reached her eyes. She'd been a junior executive at Evans Enterprises, catching my father's attention with her ruthless business acumen that mirrored his own. Their wedding was more corporate merger than celebration of love. Victoria brought her own agenda and 2 children into our home. Melissa, her daughter from her first marriage, was 2 years younger than me and immediately established herself as my rival. She mimicked Victoria, perfectly sweet as sugar when my father was present, viciously competitive when he wasn't looking. Then came Ethan, my half-brother, the son my father had always wanted. From the moment of his birth, Ethan was groomed as the Evans heir apparent. "Family is about legacy, Samantha," my father would say during our rare one-on-one interactions. "The Evans name stands for excellence. Mediocrity is not an option." Despite graduating top of my class from Princeton with dual degrees in business and marketing, my achievements were always minimized. When I landed a prestigious position at Blake & Associates, a smaller but well-respected marketing firm, rather than joining Evans Enterprises, my father called it running away from real challenges. What he never understood was that I needed to prove myself on my own merits, not riding on the Evans name. At Blake & Associates, I quickly rose through the ranks based on my innovative marketing strategies. But even as I built my own success, Victoria was working behind the scenes. I discovered later that she had been in contact with the partners at Blake & Associates, subtly undermining my position. Client proposals I'd developed would mysteriously change before presentations. Promising accounts would suddenly go cold after initial interest. Marketing plans I created would be credited to colleagues who happened to be friends with Melissa. Ethan played his part too, occasionally showing up at my workplace under the guise of brotherly visits only to gather information about my projects and clients. Being only 24, his boyish charm disarmed my colleagues, none suspecting his true motives. The night of my disownment, sitting alone in my apartment with those legal papers spread across my coffee table pieces, started falling into place. The document wasn't just about cutting me off financially, something I'd already largely achieved through my own career. This was about erasing me from the Evans legacy completely. The papers detailed how I would relinquish all rights to family assets, properties, and even required me to legally change my last name. It was as if my father wanted to remove any evidence I had ever been his daughter. According to the paperwork, my continued defiance and failure to uphold family values made me incompatible with the Evans family interests. I poured myself a glass of wine, the expensive bottle I'd bought to celebrate my birthday with friends later that week, and tried to process the magnitude of the rejection. All those years striving for approval, believing that somewhere deep down my father must be proud of me, came crashing down around me. I was truly alone now, cast out officially after years of emotional abandonment. What I didn't realize that night, as I finally cried myself to sleep with the disownment papers scattered around me, was that Victoria and my father had miscalculated badly. In their attempt to finally cut me out completely, they had actually set me free. And freedom, as I would soon discover, was the one thing they should have feared giving me most. The next morning, my eyes were still swollen from crying as I dragged myself to Westside Coffee, my usual Saturday morning spot. I needed normalcy, some small routine to cling to while my life imploded. Hunched over my laptop, I was half-heartedly updating my resume, uncertain if I should even continue using the Evans name that was no longer legally mine, when a deep voice interrupted my thoughts. "Excuse me, are you Samantha Evans?" I looked up to see an impeccably dressed man in his early 40s standing beside my table. His confident posture immediately signaled executive, but his kind eyes showed genuine interest rather than the calculating assessment I was used to from my father's business associate. "Yes," I answered cautiously, suddenly aware of my disheveled appearance. "And you are—" "Jason Wright," he extended his hand. "CEO of Wright Technologies." My heart skipped. Everyone in the tech industry knew Wright Technologies, Evans Enterprises' most formidable competitor, and the company my father complained about most frequently at family dinners. They had been gaining market share with more innovative products and progressive corporate policies, while Evans Enterprises maintained its traditional, often ruthless approach. "May I join you?" Jason asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from me. Too stunned to refuse, I nodded. As he sat down, I quickly closed the tab displaying my resume. "I've been following your work at Blake & Associates," he continued, stirring his coffee. "Your campaign for mindful tech was brilliant, increasing market penetration by 43% in a saturated space is no small feat." I blinked in surprise. That campaign had been my most innovative work, connecting sustainability with tech products in a way that resonated with multiple demographics. I'd poured my heart into it, only to have the lead partner at Blake take primary credit during the industry awards. "Thank you," I said, trying to maintain composure. "But how did you even know I worked on that?" Jason smiled. "I make it my business to know who the real talent is, regardless of who stands at the podium accepting awards." For the next 20 minutes, Jason Wright dissected specific elements of my marketing strategies that had impressed him, showing an understanding of my work that even my direct supervisors had never demonstrated. As he spoke, I felt a growing sense of validation I'd never experienced with my own father. "Samantha, I'll be direct," he finally said, leaning forward. "Wright Technologies is expanding our marketing division, and I want you to head it. Executive level, full creative control, with compensation that would place you firmly in the top bracket of industry leaders." My mouth went dry. Why me? There must be dozens of marketing executives with more experience. Experience isn't everything. Innovation, integrity, and the courage to forge your own path, those qualities are rarer and more valuable. He paused. "And yes, I know about your situation with Evans Enterprises and your father." My face flushed with embarrassment. "How much do you know?" "Enough to understand you've succeeded, despite obstacles, not because of privileges," he answered carefully. "The tech industry talks, Samantha. Richard Evans' treatment of you hasn't gone unnoticed. Neither has your determination to build your own reputation." I stared into my now cold coffee, conflicted. Despite everything, years of family loyalty were hard to break. This feels like a betrayal, I admitted. Is it betrayal to recognize your own worth when others won't? Jason asked quietly. Evans Enterprises didn't want you. I do. More importantly, I want you for your talent, not your family name. He slid a folder across the table containing the formal offer. The compensation package made me gasp. It would give me complete financial independence. The position outlined would place me on the executive leadership team with authority over global marketing strategy. I don't expect an immediate answer, Jason said, standing up. Take the weekend to consider it. My direct number is in the folder. As he turned to leave, I found my voice. Why now? If you've been following my work, why approach me today? Jason's expression turned serious. Let's just say I believe in timing, Samantha. And right now, Evans Enterprises is vulnerable in ways they don't yet realize. He offered a parting smile. I think you might be exactly what Right Technologies needs to reshape the industry landscape. After he left, I opened the folder again, examining every detail of the offer. It wasn't just a job, it was a chance to prove myself on the biggest possible stage, to step out from my father's shadow completely. That evening, after hours of consideration, I called the number. Jason answered immediately. I accept, I said firmly, feeling both terrified and exhilarated. But I want to be clear, I won't use confidential information about Evans Enterprises. I'll succeed with my own strategies, not corporate espionage. I would expect nothing less, Jason replied. That integrity is precisely why I want you on my team. We'll draw up the contracts immediately. Welcome to Right Technologies, Samantha. As I ended the call, a movement caught my eye outside my apartment window. A black sedan was parked across the street, and I could have sworn I glimpsed Victoria's distinctive silhouette in the passenger seat. By the time I looked again, the car was pulling away. The game, it seemed, was already beginning. My first day at Right Technologies couldn't have been more different from my experiences at Evans Enterprises. Where my father's company occupied a towering glass monolith downtown, all sharp angles and intimidating architecture, Wright's headquarters embraced an open, collaborative environment. Sunlight poured through skylights, and innovation spaces replaced stuffy conference rooms. Jason personally introduced me to the executive team before showing me to my office, a corner space with views of the city that made my previous workspace look like a storage closet. This is Lindsay Chen, your deputy director, Jason said, introducing me to a sharp-eyed woman with a confident handshake. She's been with us for 5 years and knows everything about our current marketing operations. Lindsay smiled warmly. It's great to meet you, Samantha. Your Mindful Tech campaign was a game changer. I've been hoping to work with you since I saw that presentation. I'd barely settled in when Jason called an all-hands meeting to announce my appointment. Standing beside him on the stage, facing hundreds of curious faces, I felt a surge of both terror and exhilaration. Samantha Evans brings not only exceptional talent, but a fresh perspective that Right Technologies needs as we prepare to launch our most ambitious product line, Jason told the assembled employees. Her leadership of our global marketing strategy will be instrumental in our next phase of growth. The applause was genuine, without the undercurrent of resentment I'd grown accustomed to when receiving recognition. For the first time in my professional life, I felt I was being valued for my abilities rather than judged for my lineage. That feeling lasted exactly 3 days. I was reviewing preliminary concepts for Wright's upcoming AI assistant launch when my personal phone rang. My father's name flashed on the screen, the first contact since he'd handed me the Disownment papers. Against my better judgment, I answered. How dare you, Richard Evans, growled without preamble. After everything this family has given you, you betray us like this. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I didn't betray anyone. You legally disowned me, remember? Handed me the papers yourself over birthday cake. Don't be dramatic, Samantha. Those papers were a wake-up call, not a final decision. You were supposed to realize your mistakes and come back to the family with some humility. His voice hardened. Instead, you run straight to our biggest competitor. The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost laughable. That's not how legal disownment works, Dad. You can't just use it as a disciplinary tactic. This isn't about technicalities, he snapped. This is about loyalty. Right Technologies has been trying to undermine Evans Enterprises for years. And yet they recognized my value immediately, which is more than you ever did, I countered. There was a momentary silence before his voice turned dangerously quiet. You have access to proprietary information about our operations, our strategies. If any of that information makes its way to Wright, I would never do that, I interrupted, genuinely offended. Unlike some people, I have integrity. We'll see about that, he replied coldly. You've made a powerful enemy today, Samantha. The Evans name still means something in this industry, even if you've chosen to disgrace it. The line went dead. I sat motionless, the phone still pressed to my ear as his threat echoed in my mind. I'd expected anger, but the calculated malice in his tone sent a chill through me. The following morning, my concern proved justified. The headline of Tech Business Daily blared Evans' heiress defects to Wright Technologies' industrial espionage concerns raised. The article quoted anonymous sources close to Evans Enterprises, claiming I had downloaded confidential files before my departure from my former employer. Victoria was quoted directly expressing deep concern about sensitive family business information in unstable hands. The fact that I had never even worked at Evans Enterprises apparently didn't matter to the story. Jason called me into his office as soon as the article appeared. I assume you've seen this, he said, gesturing to the publication on his desk. It's completely fabricated, I assured him. I've never had access to Evans Enterprises files. I worked at Blake & Associates, not my father's company. I know, Jason replied calmly, but your father has considerable influence in this industry. This is just the opening move. He was right. By afternoon, Evans Enterprises had filed a lawsuit alleging breach of confidentiality and theft of trade secrets, naming both me and Wright Technologies as defendants. But there's nothing to this case, I insisted to our legal team during an emergency meeting. I literally cannot have stolen documents I never had access to. The lead counsel, a formidable woman named Diana Walsh, smiled grimly. Evidence has a way of appearing when powerful people need it to. We just received the initial discovery request. Evans Enterprises claims to have server logs showing you remotely accessed their systems on multiple occasions. That's impossible, I exclaimed. I've never had login credentials for their systems. Someone has been laying groundwork for this for some time, Diana observed. The timestamps go back months. As the meeting concluded, Jason pulled me aside. Don't worry about this. We have resources to fight baseless allegations. His confidence steadied me. They're trying to destabilize you before you can make an impact here. Don't let them. Later that evening, as I was gathering my things to leave, Lindsay knocked on my office door. Rough first week, she said sympathetically. For what it's worth, everyone here believes you. Thanks, I replied, genuinely grateful for the support. I just don't understand how they've manufactured evidence that doesn't exist. Lindsay hesitated. I might have some insight on that. Before coming to Wright, I briefly worked at a cybersecurity firm that contracted with Evans Enterprises. Victoria Evans has a reputation for creative solutions to problems. And she has connections to people who can create very convincing digital paper trails. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text message from a number I hadn't seen in months, Ethan. We need to talk, it read. I don't agree with what Dad and Victoria are doing. Meet me tomorrow. I have information that could help you. I showed the message to Lindsay, who frowned. Be careful, she warned. This could be another trap, or it could be my first real ally from my former life I countered. What I didn't say aloud was that despite everything, a small part of me desperately wanted to believe that at least one member of my family would choose loyalty to me over loyalty to the Evans empire. That hope, as I would soon discover, was the weakness Victoria was counting on exploiting next. I selected a quiet restaurant in a neighboring town for my meeting with Ethan, somewhere neither Evans nor Wright employees typically frequented. Arriving early, I secured a corner booth with a view of both entrances and ordered sparkling water. While I waited, anxiety gnawing my stomach, Ethan arrived 10 minutes late, looking more like our father than ever in a tailored suit that emphasized his tall frame. At 24, he projected the confidence of someone who had never questioned his place in the world. "Sam," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. He was the only one who had ever called me that. "Thanks for meeting me." "What do you want, Ethan?" I asked, bypassing pleasantries. "Your text said you have information." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I want you to know I tried to talk Dad out of the disownment. And this lawsuit is completely Victoria's doing. She's been planning this for months. Why would you oppose it?" I couldn't keep the skepticism from my voice. "You've been the crown prince since you were born. My removal just clears your path." Pain flashed across his features. "Is that what you think of me, that I've been plotting against you all these years? Haven't you? The convenient visits to my workplace, always asking about my projects." "Because I admired your work," he interrupted. "Sam, I've been trying to learn from you. You're the only one in the family who made it on your own merit instead of riding Dad's coattails." His earnestness made me hesitate. Could I have misread him all these years? "Victoria has been manipulating all of us," he continued. "She convinced Dad that you were undermining Evans Enterprises by refusing to join the company, that your success elsewhere made him look weak. And now she's terrified you'll help Wright Technologies outmaneuver Evans, which explains the lawsuit," I murmured. Ethan nodded. "She has people creating false evidence as we speak. Server logs, emails, file transfers, all backdated and fabricated to frame you." "How do you know this?" "I overheard her talking to her special consultant, some shady tech guy who does her dirty work. When I confronted her, she tried to convince me it was for the family's protection. Despite my lingering suspicion, his information aligned with what Lindsay had suggested about Victoria's methods." "There's more," Ethan said, checking his watch. "I've arranged for you to meet someone who can help. He should be here any minute." As if on cue, a distinguished-looking man in his 50s approached our table. I recognized him immediately. Derek Morgan, Evans Enterprises' chief legal counsel for the past decade. "Miss Evans," he greeted me formally, sliding into the booth beside Ethan. "Or should I say Miss Wright now?" "It's still Evans," I replied cautiously. "For now, anyway." "Derek has been documenting Victoria's unethical actions for months," Ethan explained. "He's willing to help you fight the lawsuit." Morgan placed a sealed envelope on the table. "This contains evidence that the allegations against you are fabricated. Server access logs showing the actual IP addresses that created the documents they're claiming you stole. Timestamps proving they were created after you left Blake and Associates." I stared at the envelope without touching it. "Why would you risk your position to help me?" Morgan's expression hardened. "Victoria has crossed ethical and legal lines I cannot abide. She's putting the entire company at risk with her vendetta against you. When this lawsuit fails, as it will with this evidence, the blowback could damage Evans Enterprises irreparably." "You're protecting the company, not me," I observed. "Our interests temporarily align," he acknowledged. "Take the envelope, Miss Evans. What you do with it is your decision." After Morgan departed, Ethan seemed relieved. "This will clear you, Sam. And maybe once this is over, there's a chance to repair things with Dad. I don't know if that's possible anymore, I said honestly. Just promise me you'll consider it, he pressed. Family should mean something, even our dysfunctional version of it. I left the meeting with the envelope in my bag and conflicting emotions in my heart. Part of me wanted to believe Ethan's apparent sincerity, while another part remained wary of anything connected to Evans Enterprises. Back at Wright Technologies, I brought the evidence directly to Jason and our legal team. Diana Walsh examined the documents carefully. "This appears legitimate," she said finally. "The metadata supports Morgan's claims about fabricated evidence. This could dismantle their entire case." Jason looked thoughtful. "This is valuable, but we need to be strategic about how we use it." He turned to me. "What's your take on Ethan and Morgan's motivations?" "Morgan is protecting the company from Victoria's recklessness," I answered. "Ethan?" "I'm less certain. He seems sincere about wanting to help me, but he's always been skilled at saying what people want to hear." Jason nodded. "Let's proceed with caution. We'll have our cybersecurity team verify these documents before we make any moves." The verification came back positive, and Wright Technologies' legal and executive teams developed a counter-strategy based on Morgan's evidence. Within days, we had filed a robust response to the lawsuit while simultaneously preparing to launch an aggressive new product line that would directly compete with Evans Enterprises' flagship offering. The marketing campaign I developed leveraged the evidence, subtly positioning Wright Technologies as the ethical alternative in the tech marketplace, without directly mentioning the lawsuit. Early market research showed the message resonating strongly with consumers. My confidence grew as we moved forward with the strategy. Perhaps Ethan had truly allied himself with me against Victoria's machinations. 3 weeks later, we launched the campaign. The initial market response was overwhelmingly positive, with pre-orders exceeding projections by 40%. Evans Enterprises stock dipped in response, while Wright Technologies saw a significant uptick. Then everything collapsed. The evidence Morgan provided contained embedded malware that had been steadily collecting proprietary information from Wright Technologies' servers since I'd brought it into the building. Simultaneously, critical components of our new product line began catastrophically failing in quality control test components sourced from a supplier that Ethan had casually recommended during our lunch. Wright Technologies' stock plummeted as news of the product failures broke. The board called an emergency meeting during which several members openly questioned Jason's judgment in hiring me. "This cannot be coincidence," Jason stated firmly during the meeting. "We've been expertly played." That evening, I received a text message from an unknown number. It contained only a photo of Victoria, Ethan, and Derek Morgan toasting champagne glasses with a caption, "Congratulations on your successful product launch." The betrayal was complete. I hadn't just been manipulated. I had been the unwitting vector for an elaborate corporate sabotage scheme, and I had led Wright Technologies directly into the trap. The fallout was swift and devastating. Wright Technologies' stock dropped 27% in a single day, their biggest loss in company history. Financial analysts who had been praising the company's innovative direction just days earlier now questioned its fundamental stability. The product line I had been marketing was indefinitely delayed due to the component failures, with estimated losses in the tens of millions. Jason called an emergency all-staff meeting to address the crisis. I sat in the front row feeling the weight of hundreds of stares on my back, employees whose jobs and financial security were now at risk because of my mistake. "I want to be absolutely clear," Jason stated from the podium. "Wright Technologies has been the target of corporate espionage and sabotage. We are working with federal authorities to investigate, and we will pursue all legal remedies available." He didn't mention my name or my connection to the Evans family, but he didn't need to. The whispers had already started. By afternoon, 3 board members had called for my termination. Jason held them off temporarily, but our previously warm working relationship had chilled considerably. I caught him watching me during meetings with an expression I couldn't quite read: suspicion, disappointment. Then came the anonymous leak to TechWire, one of the industry's most influential news outlets. Evans' heiress sabotages competitor after disownment. The article featured quotes from inside sources at Right Technologies, claiming I had deliberately undermined the company as revenge against my father, using my position to orchestrate the catastrophic product failure from within. Samantha Evans' apparent defection to Right was actually the first step in an elaborate scheme to protect her family's business interests, the article claimed. Sources close to the Evans family suggest this may have been her way of attempting to regain her position in the family hierarchy. The story spread like wildfire across tech publications and mainstream business news. Overnight, I became the corporate villain of the moment, the spurned daughter who had infiltrated her father's competitor for sabotage rather than success. The next morning, I was placed on administrative leave, pending an internal investigation. I need to protect the company, Jason explained, when he delivered the news in his office security personnel, waiting discreetly outside the door. The board is demanding action. I didn't do this, Jason, I insisted, fighting back tears. I was set up. They used my family connection against me against Right. I want to believe you, he replied, his tone measured. But the evidence is troubling. The malware entered our system through files you brought in. The failed components came from a supplier you endorsed. Based on information from Ethan, I was manipulated, and the fact remains that you trusted information from Evans Enterprises executives, despite the obvious conflict of interest. He sighed heavily. The investigation will determine what happens next. In the meantime, we need to collect your company devices and credentials. I surrendered my laptop and badge in a daze. Security escorted me to my office to collect personal belongings, then to the building exit. Employees watched from behind glass walls, their expressions ranging from sympathy to outright hostility. At home, I found myself essentially under house arrest. Reporters camped outside my apartment building. My phone filled with messages from former colleagues at Blake & Associates distancing themselves from me. Even friends I'd known since college stopped responding to texts. Days later, Lindsay Chen risked her position at Right to meet me at a coffee shop 3 towns over. They're going through everything on your company laptop, she informed me quietly. But something isn't adding up. The malware signatures don't match typical corporate espionage patterns. They're too obvious, almost like they were meant to be discovered. Of course they were, I said bitterly. The point wasn't just to damage Right, it was to destroy my credibility in the process. There's more, Lindsay continued, glancing around nervously. I've been quietly looking into the technical aspects of the frame-up. Your company laptop shows evidence of remote access during times you weren't even using it. Someone hacked in to plant additional evidence. Hope flickered for the first time in days. Can you prove it? Working on it. But you need to know, Jason received an email yesterday with screenshots of what appear to be messages from you to Victoria Evans discussing the sabotage plan. They look extremely convincing. My stomach dropped. They're completely fabricated. I haven't communicated with Victoria in any form since before the disownment. I believe you, Lindsay assured me. But the board doesn't. Jason is under enormous pressure to terminate you and pursue legal action. 2 days later, it happened. Jason didn't deliver the news himself. Instead, a terse email from HR informed me of my termination for corporate espionage and breach of fiduciary duty. It was followed by a formal letter from Right Technologies' legal department, indicating they were cooperating with authorities in a criminal investigation against me. The final blow came that evening, when Jason himself called. I've reviewed all the evidence, Samantha, he said, without preamble. The emails, the server logs, the timeline of events. His voice hardened. I defended you to the board until the technical team found the encrypted communications channel on your laptop, linking directly back to Evans Enterprises servers. Jason, that's impossible. Don't he cut me off. I took a chance on you. I put my reputation on the line. And you used that trust to sabotage everything we've built here. I was framed, I insisted. Victoria and Ethan, save it for the courts, he replied coldly. We're filing a civil suit for damages tomorrow. Criminal charges will likely follow. If I were you, I'd hire a good attorney. The line went dead, and with it, my last hope of salvaging my professional reputation. Victoria's plan had succeeded beyond her wildest expectations. Not only was I cut off from my family, I was now potentially facing criminal charges while being labeled the biggest corporate traitor since Aldrich Ames. I was contemplating the complete implosion of my life when an unexpected email arrived from a blocked address. It contained a single line. Not everyone believes the lies. Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m. Riverside Park, East Bench by the old oak tree. The message was signed, simply, an ally. With nothing left to lose, I decided to take the chance. Little did I know that this mysterious meeting would become my first step toward redemption and the beginning of Victoria's downfall. The next morning, I awoke to a formal eviction notice slipped under my apartment door. Termination of lease due to criminal activity and public nuisance concerns, the document stated. My landlord, Pristine Properties, a company I would later discover had significant investment from Victoria's private portfolio, was giving me 72 hours to vacate. I sat on my kitchen floor surrounded by half-packed boxes. The eviction notice crumpled in my fist. My bank had frozen my accounts pending investigation. Credit cards declined. Professional contacts vanished. The carefully constructed life I had built independent of my family name had been methodically dismantled in less than a month. My phone rang an unknown number that I answered out of desperate hope it might be Lindsay with good news. Is this Samantha Evans? An unfamiliar voice asked. Yes, I replied cautiously. This is Martin Gregory from the Boston Globe. We're running a feature on corporate espionage and would like to get your side of... I hung up and blocked the number, then checked my phone. 17 missed calls from various news outlets. My email inbox overflowed with interview requests, alternating with hate mail from Right Technologies, employees who blamed me for the company's plummeting stock and the layoffs that had begun that morning. At precisely 2 p.m., I sat on the designated bench in Riverside Park, wearing large sunglasses and a baseball cap pulled low, a pitiful disguise but necessary to avoid the reporters who had taken to following me. 20 minutes passed. I was about to leave when a woman in her late 40s approached carrying a paper coffee cup and scanning the area carefully before sitting beside me. Samantha Evans, she asked quietly. I nodded, studying her. She was professionally dressed, but not in the power suit style favored by Evans Enterprises executives. She seemed vaguely familiar. Rebecca Torres, she introduced herself. I was chief financial officer at Evans Enterprises until 3 years ago. Memory clicked into place. I had met her briefly at a company holiday party years earlier. Shortly afterward, she had abruptly resigned for personal reasons, my father's standard euphemism for executives who had been forced out. You were my email, I realized. Yes, I've been following your situation closely. Rebecca sipped her coffee. You're not the first person Victoria has systematically destroyed, you know. Just the most public example. You too. Rebecca nodded grimly. I noticed accounting irregularities involving Victoria's pet projects. Significant funds being directed to shell companies, expenses that didn't match deliverables. When I brought my concerns to your father, I was fired the next day. Victoria had fabricated evidence suggesting I was the one committing financial improprieties. Did you fight it? I asked. I tried, but Victoria had been laying groundwork for months, just as she did with you. By the time I understood what was happening, my professional reputation was in tatters. She gave me a knowing look. Sound familiar? Painfully so, I admitted. But why reach out to me now? It's risky for you. Because Victoria's getting sloppy. She's accelerated her timeline with you, made some mistakes in her eagerness to destroy you completely. Rebecca leaned closer. And because I've spent 3 years gathering evidence of her illegal activities, waiting for the right moment to expose her. For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. What kind of evidence? Financial records, recordings, communications with the people she pays to do her dirty work. Rebecca handed me a USB drive, including the team that created the malware and falsified evidence used against you at Right Technologies. I stared at the small device that potentially held my redemption. Why haven't you used this already? Victoria has powerful allies, including in regulatory agencies, that would normally investigate these matters. I needed someone with both the motivation and positioning to help deploy this information effectively. Her expression hardened. Someone with the Evans name who has nothing left to lose. As Rebecca detailed what she had discovered about Victoria's operations over the past 3 years, a complete picture emerged of a woman who had systematically consolidated power, eliminated threats, and embezzled millions through an elaborate network of shell companies and fraudulent vendors. Your disownment wasn't just about family politics, Rebecca explained. Victoria needed you completely severed from Evans Enterprises before her biggest scheme comes to fruition. The quarterly financial report releasing next month contains irregularities that would be obvious to anyone with intimate knowledge of the company's true operations, someone like a family member with business acumen. Me, I whispered, the pieces finally connecting. Exactly. You were too dangerous to have around, especially after you demonstrated independence by building your own career. She checked her watch. I need to go. Review everything on the drive. Contact me through the secure email address included in the files when you're ready to discuss next steps. After Rebecca left, I relocated to a budget motel on the outskirts of town, the only accommodation I could afford with the cash I had on hand. There, on a laptop, borrowed from a former college roommate who still believed in my innocence, I examined the contents of the USB drive. The evidence was staggering. Financial records showing millions diverted to accounts controlled by Victoria. Emails between Victoria and various consultants detailing plans to remove executives who questioned her actions. Communications with the cybersecurity specialist who had created the malware planted on my Right Technologies computer. Most damning of all, recorded conversations between Victoria and Ethan planning my professional destruction step by step with my father's reluctant approval. Richard is still soft on her, Victoria's voice stated clearly in one recording. He's agreed to the disownment, but we need her completely discredited to ensure she can't interfere with our plans. What if she just disappears after the disownment? Ethan asked. Moves away, starts over somewhere else. No chance, Victoria replied confidently. I know Samantha. Her pride won't let her slink away. She'll try to prove herself, which is exactly why Right Technologies is perfect. When she inevitably accepts their offer, our trap will be set. Hearing their calculated destruction of my life discussed so casually brought both rage and clarity. This hadn't been emotional family drama. It had been corporate calculation from the start. The next day brought further evidence of my destroyed reputation. An email from my alma mater rescinded an invitation to speak at an upcoming business leadership conference. LinkedIn notifications showed connections publicly severing ties. A pre-approved mortgage for a condo I had been considering was revoked due to character concerns. With less than 24 hours remaining before my eviction deadline, I packed my essential belongings into my car and checked out of the motel. With nowhere else to go and dwindling cash reserves, I found myself in the humiliating position of sleeping in my vehicle in a Walmart parking lot, a far cry from the Evans estate where I had grown up or the luxury apartment I had earned through my own hard work. That night, staring at the ceiling of my car, I hit the emotional bottom I needed to find my resolve. Victoria had taken everything from me: family, career, reputation, home. The only thing I had left was the truth Rebecca had provided and the burning determination to reclaim my life and expose those who had destroyed it. I opened my laptop connected to the store's Wi-Fi and sent a message to the secure email address Rebecca had provided. I'm ready. What's our next step? Her response came within minutes. Meet me tomorrow at the address below. Bring everything you have. I've found someone else who wants to help. The address belonged to Catherine Bennett, my mother's best friend from college and now a senior partner at Bennett & Frost Investment Banking. I had lost touch with her after my mother's death, another connection Victoria had methodically severed. Catherine opened her door the next morning, took one look at my exhausted face, and pulled me into a fierce hug. Elizabeth's daughter doesn't sleep in her car while I have a perfectly good guest room, she stated, firmly ushering me inside where Rebecca already waited. Now let's talk about how we're going to make Victoria Evans regret the day she ever crossed you. For the first time since receiving those disownment papers on my birthday, I felt something stronger than despair. I felt purpose. And with these two formidable women beside me, I finally had allies who could help me transform that purpose into action. Catherine's penthouse became our war room. With its sweeping views of the city, we could see both the Evans Enterprises Tower and the Wright Technologies campus visual reminders of the battlefield where we would wage our campaign for justice and redemption. First things first, Catherine said, pouring coffee for the three of us the morning after I moved into her guest room. We need to stabilize your immediate situation before launching any counterattack. She slid a black credit card across the table. This is connected to my personal accounts. Use it for necessities while we sort this out. Catherine, I can't. You can and you will, she interrupted firmly. Your mother would never forgive me if I didn't help you now. Consider it a loan if your pride demands it. Rebecca spread printed copies of key documents from her USB drive across the table. Now let's organize what we have and identify what we still need. Over the next 3 days, we meticulously compiled evidence of Victoria's schemes. Rebecca's financial expertise helped trace the money trails through shell companies and offshore accounts. Catherine's banking connections provided insights into unusual transaction patterns involving Evans Enterprises. My marketing background proved useful in developing a strategic approach to deploying the information for maximum impact. Victoria's strategy has always been isolation, followed by destruction, Rebecca explained. She separates her targets from potential allies, then methodically eliminates their professional credibility. Which means our counter strategy needs to be about connection and credibility restoration, I realized. We need to rebuild my network while simultaneously exposing Victoria's actions. Catherine nodded approvingly. Exactly. And we need to be just as methodical as she was, but smarter. We identified a pattern in Victoria's operations. She had systematically removed or neutralized at least 7 executives who had questioned her activities or posed threats to her control. Each case followed a similar playbook. Evidence of wrongdoing would mysteriously appear, the executive would be terminated or forced to resign, and Victoria would install someone loyal to her in the vacated position. The real genius is that she's been manipulating my father through all of this. I observed, studying the timeline we had created. He believes he's making these decisions, but she's orchestrating everything. Richard Evans has always had a blind spot for beautiful women who admire him, Catherine commented. Your mother was the exception. She challenged him, made him better. Victoria just makes him feel infallible. Our investigation revealed that Victoria had been manipulating company financials to increase her personal wealth through a sophisticated scheme involving technology procurement. Evans Enterprises would contract with vendors controlled secretly by Victoria at inflated prices, with the excess flowing back to her through layers of shell companies. This explains why she was so threatened by you potentially joining Evans Enterprises, Rebecca pointed out. Your marketing expertise would have inevitably led you to question the excessive spending on mediocre vendor services, and why she needed me completely discredited, not just removed from the family, I added. If I had simply been disowned but maintained my professional reputation, I might still have been able to expose her schemes through industry connections. With our understanding of Victoria's operations complete, we developed a three-pronged strategy. First, create an anonymous whistleblower profile to report Victoria's financial improprieties to the Securities and Exchange Commission, providing documented evidence of her embezzlement schemes. Second, carefully approach select Evans Enterprises board members with evidence of how Victoria had been manipulating my father and the company to her benefit. Third, set a trap to catch Victoria and Ethan openly discussing their illegal activities. Catherine used her banking connections to arrange discreet meetings with two Evans board members, who had been friends with my mother and had always been skeptical of Victoria's rapid rise in the company. They won't move against Victoria without ironclad evidence, Catherine cautioned after the meetings. They respect your father too much to create a scandal based on circumstantial documentation. Then we'll get them something ironclad, I determined. Rebecca, how confident are you about the predictions for next quarter's financials? Very, she replied. Based on the pattern of transactions I've documented, Victoria is planning to execute her largest diversion of funds to date right after the quarterly board meeting. Perfect, I said, a plan forming. We'll need to time this precisely. Over the next 2 weeks, we executed our strategy with surgical precision. I created an anonymous digital identity, meticulously documented Victoria's financial schemes, and submitted a comprehensive report to the SEC through their whistleblower program. Rebecca used her remaining contacts at Evans Enterprises to gather intelligence on Victoria and Ethan's movements and plans. Catherine, meanwhile, discreetly reached out to select financial analysts who covered the tech sector, planting seeds of questions about certain aspects of Evans Enterprises' financial reporting that would germinate when the next quarterly report was released. The trap we set was elegant in its simplicity. Through Rebecca's contacts, we learned that Victoria and Ethan regularly met at an exclusive restaurant's private dining room to discuss operations away from the company offices. We arranged for state-of-the-art recording equipment to be installed in that room before their next scheduled meeting. The resulting recording captured mother and son openly discussing their framing of me, the falsified evidence planted at Wright Technologies, and their upcoming plans to move millions from Evans Enterprises accounts into their offshore holdings following the quarterly board meeting. Once this quarter's transfers are complete, we'll have enough set aside to walk away if necessary. Victoria's voice stated clearly on the recording. Richard will never know what hit him. What about Samantha? Ethan asked. She's completely finished in the industry, right? Victoria's laugh was chilling. Oh, she's beyond finished. No company will touch her now. Last I heard, she's practically homeless. Another month and she'll probably leave the state, change her name. Not that she's legally in Evans anymore anyway. With this evidence in hand, I made the most difficult call of my life to Jason Wright. To my surprise, he actually answered. Samantha, he said, his tone wary. I'm surprised to hear from you. I have evidence proving my innocence, I stated without preamble. Recordings of Victoria and Ethan Evans discussing how they framed me and sabotaged Wright Technologies. I need 15 minutes of your time. There was a long silence before he responded. Send what you have to my personal email. If it's legitimate, we'll talk. The next day, my phone rang with Jason's number. "My security team has authenticated the recordings," he said, his voice subdued. "Samantha, I owe you an apology. It appears we were both victims in this." "More than you know," I replied. "There's additional evidence you should see. When can we meet?" Jason didn't just meet with me. He brought Right Technology's entire executive team and legal department to Catherine's penthouse. For 3 hours, we presented the complete case against Victoria and Ethan, including their broader financial schemes at Evans Enterprises and the elaborate plot to sabotage Wright. "This is staggering," Jason finally said as we concluded our presentation. "The level of calculation involved. Victoria has been playing this game for years," Rebecca explained. "Samantha was just her most ambitious target. And we can help each other take her down," I added. "Right Technologies was damaged by her actions too. Together we can ensure justice is served while restoring both my reputation and your company's market position." Jason studied me thoughtfully. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership," I replied confidently. "I help you clear Wright's name and recover from the sabotage. You help me expose Victoria and reclaim my professional standing." After a private consultation with his team, Jason extended his hand. "Right Technologies would like to officially rehire you, Samantha Evans, with a public apology, back pay, and a promotion. We have a mutual enemy to defeat, and I'd rather have you on my side this time." As we shook hands, I felt the momentum shifting. Victoria had spent months methodically destroying my life. Now, with allies both old and new, I was positioned to expose her crimes and reclaim everything she had taken from me and more. The final phase of our counter-strategy was about to begin, and Victoria Evans had no idea what was coming. The morning of the Evans Enterprises quarterly board meeting dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the storm we were about to unleash. I stood in Catherine's guest bathroom, staring at my reflection as I prepared for the most important confrontation of my life. The woman looking back at me had changed in the weeks since receiving those disownment papers. My eyes held a steely determination that hadn't been there before. I had been broken down to nothing and rebuilt myself stronger than ever. "Ready?" Catherine asked, appearing in the doorway. "As I'll ever be," I replied, smoothing my jacket, a power suit she had insisted on having tailored for me for this occasion. Jason was waiting in the living room, reviewing our strategy one last time with Rebecca and the Right Technologies legal team. In the 3 days since my reinstatement at Wright, we had worked around the clock preparing for this moment. "Remember," Jason cautioned as we gathered our materials, "our goal isn't just exposure. We need to secure both companies' futures in the process." The Evans Enterprises headquarters lobby fell silent as our group entered. Security initially moved to block our progress until Jason presented documentation of our scheduled appearance before the board. The guard's eyes widened slightly as he recognized me, but he made the call to confirm our clearance. "They're expected in the main boardroom," he told his colleague after hanging up. Executive elevator. As the elevator ascended to the top floor, I felt a curious sense of calm. The last time I had been in this building had been for a tense family dinner 6 months earlier. Now, I was returning not as Richard Evans' disappointing daughter, but as an executive in my own right, with the evidence to expose the rot at the company's core. The boardroom doors opened to reveal the complete Evans Enterprises leadership assembled around the massive mahogany table. My father sat at the head with Victoria to his right and Ethan beside her. The remaining seats were filled with board members and executives, many of whom I had known since childhood. My father's face registered shock, then fury as I entered behind Jason. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded, rising from his chair. "Security? Please remain seated, Mr. Evans," Jason replied calmly. "We're here by invitation of board members Harrison and Blackwell." He nodded toward the 2 older men who had been my mother's friends. and what we have to share concerns the future of your company." Victoria's composure slipped momentarily before she recovered, placing a hand on my father's arm. "Richard, this is clearly some kind of publicity stunt. They have no place at this meeting." On the contrary, I spoke for the first time, moving to the center of the room. "This is exactly where we need to be." I placed a flash drive on the table. "This contains evidence of extensive financial fraud, corporate espionage, and illegal activities conducted by Victoria and Ethan Evans over the past 3 years." The room erupted in overlapping voices until my father slammed his hand on the table. "Enough, Samantha. If this is some desperate attempt at revenge for your disownment—" "This isn't about the disownment," I interrupted. "This is about Victoria systematically looting Evans Enterprises while eliminating anyone who might expose her, including me." Board member Harrison cleared his throat. "Given the seriousness of these accusations and the documentation we've been preliminarily shown, the board has agreed to hear this presentation." Victoria's eyes narrowed dangerously. "This is absurd. Richard, are you going to allow your disgraced daughter and our chief competitor to disrupt our quarterly meeting with baseless allegations?" My father hesitated, looking between Victoria and the board members. Finally, he nodded curtly. "Let them present. Then we'll decide how to proceed." For the next hour, we methodically laid out the evidence against Victoria and Ethan. Jason explained how Wright Technologies had been deliberately sabotaged through components and malware designed to fail. Rebecca presented financial documentation showing millions diverted from Evans Enterprises to Victoria's hidden accounts. I provided context for how I had been systematically targeted to prevent me from uncovering the scheme. The final piece was the recording of Victoria and Ethan discussing their plans. As Victoria's voice filled the boardroom openly, discussing how they had framed me and planned to defraud the company, further the color drained from my father's face. When the recording concluded, silence enveloped the room. Victoria stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "These recordings are obviously fabricated," she insisted. "This is industrial espionage by Wright Technologies using Richard's estranged daughter as their pawn. The recordings have been authenticated by 3 independent experts," Jason countered, sliding reports across the table. "As have the financial records showing $37 million diverted from Evans Enterprises to shell companies under your control." Ethan, looking increasingly pale, leaned over to whisper something to Victoria, who silenced him with a sharp look. My father had not spoken during the entire presentation. Now he turned to Victoria, his expression unreadable. "Is this true? Richard, you can't possibly believe this coordinated attack," she scoffed. "Your daughter has clearly fabricated this evidence with Wright's resources to exact revenge." "That doesn't explain the financial discrepancies," board member Blackwell noted, "which align perfectly with the unusual contracting patterns I've questioned for the past 2 years. Victoria's strategy shifted instantly. "Any financial decisions were approved by you, Richard. As CEO, you signed off on every contract, every vendor relationship." Her eyes hardened. "If there are irregularities, the responsibility lies with you." The calculated betrayal stunned even me. After years of manipulation, Victoria was prepared to sacrifice my father to save herself. Before anyone could respond, the boardroom doors opened to admit 3 individuals in dark suits. "Securities and Exchange Commission," the lead agent announced, displaying credentials. "We have warrants to seize records related to an ongoing investigation into financial fraud at Evans Enterprises." "This is outrageous," Victoria exclaimed. "Who authorized this?" "We received detailed documentation through our whistleblower program," the agent replied. The evidence was sufficient for a federal judge to approve these warrants. As the agents began setting up to collect digital records, Victoria's facade finally cracked. "This is a witch hunt orchestrated by your daughter," she told my father desperately. "Everything I've done has been for us, for our future. By stealing from my company," my father asked quietly. "By destroying my daughter's reputation. By planning to frame me for your crimes." Victoria realized her mistake too late. "Richard, I can explain." "I believe you've explained enough," he interrupted, his voice ice cold. He turned to the board. "I move for the immediate termination of Victoria and Ethan Evans from all positions at Evans Enterprises pending criminal investigation. I further move that we cooperate fully with the SEC and any law enforcement agencies regarding this matter." The vote was unanimous. As Victoria and Ethan were escorted from the boardroom by security, my father seemed to age a decade before my eyes. The powerful CEO was replaced by a broken man who had finally recognized how thoroughly he had been manipulated and what he had lost in the process. After the SEC agents departed with their collected evidence and the board meeting was officially adjourned, my father approached me hesitantly. "Samantha," he began, his voice uncharacteristically uncertain. "I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything right now," I replied, gathering my materials. Today wasn't about us. It was about protecting Evans Enterprises from Victoria's crimes. Jason had stepped away to give us privacy, but remained within sight, a subtle reminder that I no longer stood alone. "I was wrong," my father admitted. "About Victoria. About you. About many things." I nodded, acknowledging his words without offering immediate forgiveness. "We can discuss that another time. Right now, both of our companies need damage control strategies." A flicker of the businessman reasserted itself. "Yes, of course. The market reaction to this will be significant, which is why Jason and I have developed a proposal," I continued. "A way for Evans Enterprises and Wright Technologies to weather this storm while positioning both companies for stronger futures." My father glanced toward Jason, then back to me. "You've been busy." "I learned from the best," I replied, allowing a small smile. "Even when your methods were harsh, your business instincts were usually right." Something like pride flickered across his face, an expression I had spent decades trying to earn. "I'd like to hear this proposal." As we rejoined Jason to outline our collaborative approach to the crisis, I realized that the corporate showdown had accomplished more than exposing Victoria. It had fundamentally shifted the balance of power between my father and me. For the first time, we were speaking as equals, two business professionals addressing a shared challenge. The Disownment papers that had devastated me on my birthday now seemed like distant history. In trying to destroy me, Victoria had inadvertently set me free to discover my own strength, forge new alliances, and create a future entirely on my own terms. 6 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. Evans Enterprises underwent a comprehensive restructuring following Victoria and Ethan's removal. The financial markets, initially rocked by the scandal, eventually stabilized as both Evans and Wright implemented the transparent cooperation strategy we had developed. Victoria and Ethan faced multiple federal charges for fraud, embezzlement, and corporate espionage. Their legal troubles mounted as additional victims came forward with evidence of similar schemes at other companies where Victoria had worked before marrying my father. Most of their assets were frozen pending the outcomes of various lawsuits and criminal proceedings. I divided my time between Wright Technologies, where I continued to lead marketing initiatives, and advisory meetings at Evans Enterprises, where my industry insights proved valuable during the recovery phase. On a crisp autumn afternoon, coincidentally almost exactly a year after receiving those disownment papers, I found myself back at the Evans estate for a meeting with my father. The mansion looked the same, its manicured grounds and imposing facade unchanged, yet everything else had transformed. My father's assistant showed me to his home office, a space that had once intimidated me with its austere decoration and formal atmosphere. Now I entered as a professional peer rather than a subordinate daughter. Richard Evans stood as I entered, gesturing to the sitting area rather than remaining behind his imposing desk. The past 6 months had etched new lines around his eyes, but he looked healthier than during the chaos following Victoria's exposure, less haunted. "Thank you for coming, Samantha," he said, pouring coffee from a carafe. "I appreciate you making time in your schedule." "Jason was intrigued by your request," I replied, accepting the cup. "So was I." My father reached into his desk drawer and withdrew a familiar-looking document. "I believe this belongs to you. Or rather, it shouldn't exist at all." The Disownment papers, the same ones he had presented to me on my birthday a year ago, were now marked with a bold red stamp, nullified. "I've had our legal team completely reverse the disownment," he explained, retroactively. "As far as the law is concerned, you have always been and continue to be a full member of the Evans family with all associated rights and privileges." I studied the document without touching it. "Why now?" "Because I was wrong," he said simply. "About many things, but especially about you. Victoria manipulated me, yes, but I allowed that manipulation because it aligned with my own flaws. My inability to see your independence as strength rather than defiance." He picked up the papers and deliberately tore them in half, then quarters, continuing until they were confetti. "These should never have existed." The gesture was symbolic but powerful. I felt an unexpected lightness, as if a weight I had carried for years, not just since the disownment, but throughout my life seeking his approval, had finally lifted. "I have something else to discuss," my father continued, returning to his desk to retrieve another folder. "The board has asked me to present you with this." Inside was an offer letter for the position of Chief Executive Officer at Evans Enterprises. "The board feels, and I agree, that new leadership is necessary to fully restore confidence in the company," he explained. "I'll be stepping down at the end of the quarter." I stared at the document, momentarily speechless. "You're offering me your job." "The board is offering you the position you've earned," he corrected. "I'm simply endorsing their decision." A year ago, this offer would have represented everything I had ever worked for, my father's ultimate acknowledgement of my value. Now I recognized it as something different, an opportunity to evaluate on my own terms. "I'm honored by the offer," I said carefully, "but I need to consider how it aligns with my current commitments and future goals." My father looked surprised, then thoughtful. "Of course. Take whatever time you need." After leaving the estate, I drove to Wright Technologies, where Jason was waiting in his office. "So, he offered you the CEO position," Jason said as I entered, reading my expression. "News travels fast," I observed with a smile. "In this industry, at light speed." He leaned against his desk. "Are you going to take it?" I sank into a chair, considering. 6 months ago, I would have said absolutely not. 3 months ago, maybe. Now, I shrug. "I'm not sure Evans Enterprises is where I can make my greatest contribution." Jason nodded. "I have a counter-proposal, one the Wright board has enthusiastically endorsed." He outlined a vision where I would decline the CEO position at Evans but accept a seat on their board. Simultaneously, I would join the Wright board while maintaining my executive role. Most importantly, I would head a new joint venture between the two companies, a collaborative initiative combining Evans' hardware expertise with Wright's software innovation. The market analysts are already calling it the tech alliance of the decade, Jason concluded. And you would be at its center, leveraging the strengths of both companies without being beholden to either. The proposal was elegant, strategic, and offered something neither CEO position could: the chance to build something entirely new. 2 weeks later, I announced my decision at a joint press conference. The business media erupted with analysis of the unprecedented collaboration between former rivals. Industry commentators praised the innovation, while financial markets responded with enthusiasm, sending both companies' stocks surging. Beyond the professional resolution, personal healing proved more complicated but equally rewarding. My father and I established a new relationship, not the unconditional father-daughter bond we might have had in another lifetime, but a respectful connection between two professionals who happened to share DNA. At my suggestion, he began seeing a therapist to address the emotional limitations that had defined his approach to both business and family. I occasionally joined him for sessions focused on our relationship conversations that would have been impossible in the past. "I never knew how to be a father after your mother died," he admitted during one particularly honest session. "Business made sense to me. Emotions didn't, so I treated you like an employee rather than a daughter. And I spent years trying to earn approval rather than building my own identity," I acknowledged. The therapy helped us establish healthier boundaries and expectations moving forward. We would never have the typical father-daughter relationship, but we could build something authentic based on who we actually were, not who we thought we should be. My personal life flourished as well. Jason and I developed a relationship that evolved naturally from our professional collaboration, both of us scarred enough by past betrayals to move forward with careful honesty. Unlike my father's transactional approach to relationships or Victoria's manipulative one, ours grew from mutual respect and shared values. On my birthday, a date that had brought such devastation a year earlier, my friends and colleagues gathered for a celebration at Catherine's penthouse. Rebecca was there now, heading compliance at a major financial institution. Lindsay Chen had been promoted at Wright after her critical role in exposing the truth. Various board members and executives from both companies mingled comfortably. The former rivalry transformed into productive partnership. My father arrived late, somewhat awkward in this social setting, but making a genuine effort. He presented me with a small wrapped package. "It was your mother's," he explained, as I opened it to reveal a delicate sapphire pendant. "She always intended for you to have it on a significant birthday." It was the first time he had voluntarily mentioned my mother in years, a small but meaningful step toward healing. Later that evening, as conversations flowed around me, I stepped onto the balcony for a moment of reflection. The city lights stretched before me, including the illuminated logos of both Evans Enterprises and Wright Technologies visible on their respective buildings, symbols of the journey I had traveled. The Disownment papers that had once threatened to erase my identity had instead forced me to define myself on my own terms. In trying to destroy me, Victoria had inadvertently set me on the path to becoming stronger, wiser, and more authentically myself than I ever would have been following the traditional trajectory my father had planned. Sometimes I realized what appears to be your darkest moment can actually be the catalyst for your greatest transformation. The corporate world had taught me to view setbacks as strategic challenges rather than defeats. Now I had applied that same principle to my personal life, turning betrayal into opportunity and pain into growth. As I rejoined my guests, I carried that understanding with me, along with the certainty that whatever challenges the future might bring, I now had both the inner strength and outer support system to face them on my own terms. If you've ever faced betrayal by someone who should have had your back, I hope my story gives you strength. Family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand by you when everyone else walks away. Drop a comment below about your own experience overcoming betrayal or building yourself back up after hitting rock bottom. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their darkest moment could be the beginning of their greatest comeback. Thank you for being part of my story, and remember, sometimes being disowned is just the universe making room for you to own yourself.